All right, finally, Revit 2026 is here. And it means that we're going to get a bunch of new features and changes to the existing functionality, but also it means that it's going to affect how Revit API works. And it's really important for you to know what was removed, what was changed, and what new features are available in API so you can apply this to your scripts so they continue working without any issues. And listen, if you want to know what's new in Revit 2026, you can check other channels like BeamPure or maybe some others, or you can go to this page for Help Autodesk file, and you can go to this What's New section, where you're going to see an overview of all new features in Revit 2026. And there are a few cool ones, a few not so important ones, but you can see for yourself what's important to you. And what's good on this page is you can click on any of these changes, and it's going to give you even more information about what changed, how it was improved, and what are the differences. In here, you can even see some screenshots, which is great to see changes. But in this video, we're specifically going to focus on Revit API, because it's really important to know what has changed. And for that, I'm going to go to rvtdocs.com. Then in here, I'm going to go to 2026, and right here, the section What's New. This is going to open us the new section, What's New. And you can also see the table of contents on the left if you're going to click on this button right here. Now you can see there are a bunch of different changes, and it's really important that you can also collapse it, and you can see these are API changes, this is Obsolete API removals, and this is API additions. And I think for this lesson, we're going to begin with Obsolete API removal, because first of all, it's the shortest section, and also it's the most important. Because if you used anything from this list, well, it's going to be affected in how it works in 2026. And the way we're going to do this is I'm going to make it side by side. Let me just do this quickly. And now on the right side, I'm going to open 2025. And on the left, we're going to see all the kind of obsolete API removals. And the reason for that is because I want to open each one of these classes so we can see the obsolete message. Because oftentimes it's going to say that, hey, this method or property was removed and use this one instead. And that's what we're going to do. And we're going to start with the constructors. As you can see, Autodesk Revit DB element ID constructor has been removed. And it wasn't really removed because if you're going to go to constructors, you'll see here the obsolete version for integer 32, and now it uses integer 64. So it's like internal change how it works. So pretty much it's not going to affect really how we're going to use it. All right, and the next one, we're going to have a look at the properties. The first one is element ID integer value. Let's search for that one. I'm going to just drop it here. And right here, you can see the integer value was removed. Now it's marked obsolete. And this is because before it was already kind of marked obsolete, and now we have to use value instead. If I'm going to go in here, you notice that somewhere here it's going to say, please use value property instead. So we just need to change how we're going to get it starting from, I think, 24, 23. Now then, rebar distribution type is gone. Let's have a look at the message here. I'm going to go straight in here. And here is the obsolete attribute message. And you can see in here, depending on what you do, you can use either can have vary length of bars or also has varying length of bars. Again, depending on what you do. Then you can see floor and roof base have slab shape editor property removed. Let's have a look what's going on. And in here, it tells that use get slab shape editor instead. So now we're going to get this method instead of using the property. Overall, probably going to work the same. Then you can see there is duct pressure drop data viscosity value changed. Now, if I'm going to go to that one, now instead of viscosity, you have to use dynamic viscosity. That's fine. Probably the same is going to be for this one. For the air viscosity, now we're going to use air dynamic viscosity. Then you can see 3 times the voltage was removed. Again, probably it was just renamed to something else. Let's have a look. Yeah, now you can see there's assigned voltage. So assume all of them have the same thing. And lastly, this number of phases was also removed. Let's just quickly have a look. And now you can see instead of number of phases, you have to use phases number. Well, not a big change. All right, these were the properties. Let's actually collapse what we covered. Now the next one are the methods. Here are all the methods removed, and it's actually not so many of them because this is all the same. But let's start on the top and have a look what's going on. So the first one is PDF import available? And I can see that it was removed, and it was removed because it was always returning true, so it pretty much wasn't really useful. Now let's have a look at the next one. This is for the rebars, get constraint candidates for handle. So, and you can see the first one was removed and it was taking just one argument. Now it always takes 2. Second have to be either element ID or reference. If I'm going to click here, here's going to be the obsolete attribute message, which you can read on your own. Now let's have a look. This one, well, probably for the same reason. I'm just going to open. Here's the message. Now you have to use set preferred constraint. Everything is fine. Now the evaluate was changed, and you can see here it used to change integer 32. And I'm pretty sure it's going to stay the same. It's just going to take integer 64 instead of 32. And it's right here. This one is obsolete. This is the new one. So You can see the messages right here. All right, now we have all of these changes and they are probably for the same reason. So let's go and have a look. I'm gonna click on that one. I think it's the first one. Yep. So this was obsolete, and then you can see there's identical one, but without one argument. This is because if you're gonna have a look here, you're gonna see somewhere here that in future versions, you need to use it without case-sensitive argument. So the third parameter, which you can see right here, is now not necessary. And the same is gonna go to all of this, because you can see they all don't need this boolean indent anymore. Now we're gonna have their draw point and draw split line. And if we're gonna have a look at the slab shape editor, now you can see here are the obsolete ones, so draw line and split line. And now we have to use add points and add split line instead. I'm gonna open one of them and you can see it tells here use add point instead. Then this was removed for radial and linear array. The message is gonna be the same, that now we have to use isValid number of members. And lastly, the method isCurveLoopValid, which I think is that one. Yeah, it's now removed and it's going to be replaced with isOuterControlValid. So most of the time we just need to replace one to the other. And there's one enumeration which is gone distribution type. Let's have a look. And I'm not going to read this message. You can read it for yourself, but you can see that now you have to use something else. Overall, that's all fine. All right, and this was the obsolete API removal. This is what's gone from Revit API. And if you saw any of these method properties that used in one of your scripts, you better go and fix it and change it to whatever it was recommended. Now, so obsolete API removals are done. And now I think we're going to go to API changes because again, it's going to affect your current scripts. And then later, we're going to have a look at what's new available. So let's open it up. I can also open here on the side to see everything what's going on. These are the H2 tags, and then inside there are going to be H3 tags. And if you're going to click on them, it's going to take you there. But we're just going to go one step at a time and just briefly kind of cover what's going on. So first of all, you can see the C# was removed. Before it was constantly updated, and now they completely removed it from the API. Now let's have a look. Option for add dependency isolation. So here is the option instead of that one, you better use this one instead now. All right, you can read more about this. I'm just gonna kind of briefly go over and just kind of pinpoint what's going on. So there are parameter API changes, and you can see there is classification and assembly codes. So it used to be this, and now it's gonna be called this. Overall, you can see what's going on. I'm also gonna start collapsing things. I think it's gonna be much easier to navigate. The next one is rebar hooks and state parameters. Again, this was the original entry, and now there is the new parameter entry, which doesn't fit on the screen. Let me just zoom out. Actually, we don't need the second one anymore. We're not going to have a look anything in 25. That's going to be fine. Yep. All right, so again, this was the original entry. Now this is the new entry. I'm just going to kind of stay here for a moment. If you need it, you can pause. Otherwise, let's go next. Then length of parameter for structural beams and column was changed. You can see original name was length, now it's the system length. And I think it's just the kind of readable, visible name to users. Yeah, user visible name was changed. So it's quite irrelevant. Then reference label parameter. The type parameter of your viewer reference label text now represents a default value, blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's just skip that one. Okay, the next one, geometry API changes. So first of all, there are curve intersection API changes. A new overload and corresponding classes has been added in order to more accurately represent various edge cases. So these were depreciated members, and now it was replaced with other methods. So before it was taking just curve, now it takes curve, and also it takes curve intersection results option, right? You can see there is like simple and detailed. That's okay. You can read more information right here about this. Now let's just kind of collapse it and go next. Then the viewport API changes. First of all, there is new class, API RevitDB view position, and represents a named assigned position for view on a sheet. This is probably because of the new feature, which was somewhere here. Where is it? It was something about title block. Yeah, this one. View to sheet positioning and automated placement. So I think it refers to that one. Now, obviously, we have an API classes and kind of members to use it. Also, there was depreciated member, and now it's going to be called view anchor. Overall, that's fine. Let's close that one. Have a look at the next. browser organization API changes. So there was just a few depreciated members and replaced with something else. And here's the notes if you need it. Now, compound structure API changes. Now, the core layers no longer required. This is a good change. It means that now it can be a little bit easier to create it. All right, the next one, energy analysis API changed. I never worked with that one, so I'm not really going to pay attention much, but you can see there's some removed, some depreciated, and also removed more. If you need it, you can just pause and kind of analyze it. Otherwise, let's move on. Failures API changes. Oops. So here the depreciated members, you can see them right here, and they were replaced with that one. Well, this one was not replaced probably. Now there's events API changes. You can see document closing and closed. Now, in case of corruption or kind of your Revit canceling for some reason, these events will not be invoked. That's okay. Then stairs changed. The property arrowhead type ID can now be assigned to a value element ID invalid element ID. Okay, let's look next. Then structure API changes. The rebar cranking API additions and changes. You can read more about this right here. There's something was replaced. And other new classes related to rebars cranking include, and there are different classes. All right, let's go next. Then the rebar also has a lot of new members. You can read all about them right here. And there are also some replacements. It's quite big description what's going on. Is it right? Okay, I've never seen a method with so many arguments in API, so this is interesting. Now they seem to simplify it a bit. And again, if you work with rebars, you can see it all here. Otherwise, let's move on next. And again, this is going to be rebar types. Also a bunch of new members. Then again, rebar container, some depreciated members. Then again, container item, rebar freeform accessor, rebar shape. So a lot of changes to rebars this year. Here's more. So if you ever coded with rebars, you definitely need to kind of dive into API and see what's going on there. Way too many new things. Now let me just kind of close all of that, just so we kind of keep track what we're checking. So rebars, rebars, rebars. Okay. Then a few changes to dimension visibility. You can see there are two new properties. Next one, extensions to enumerations related to cranking. Again, to rebars probably. Then shape-driven rebar, even more changes. Again, freeform rebars. So yeah, rebars had a lot of changes in this year. Structural connections. And yeah, these are the structural API changes. Majority was about rebars. Then electrical API changes. Let's see, the new classes represent types and materials. You can see all of them here. Then electrical systems API additions. Again, here are all the changes if you're interested. Wire type member API changes. I think now I'm just going to go a bit quicker because these are very specific. And if that's something interesting to you, you can probably pause and read it for yourself to better understand it. Otherwise, just going to kind of check what's going on and move to the next one. So zone API changes. Oh, that's a big one. So a bunch of depreciated members, then replacement members. And here it just says use something else. A bunch of new classes. Oh, this is, you can see here, is it? Here it is. Yeah, so overall, they just took the properties into another class. IFC API changes, so importer options. These were depreciated, these were replaced with. That's okay. Now the category, you can see it right here. So yeah, these were the Revit API changes. You can see for yourself. If something was really interesting, you can come back here. And with this collapsible menus, it's going to be very easy to find. Or you can, again, use this kind of sidebar navigation. Let's say you need failure API. You click here, boom, you're going to end up there. I'm just going to hide it for now because we don't need it. Lastly, API additions, right? There are a bunch of different new functionality, and there are going to be a lot of classes here as well. Again, we're just going to go quickly because I don't think we really need to get into that. It's just good to understand what's going on, and then later you can come back and kind of look it for yourself. So first of all, add-in management API additions. So now we have all the controls to kind of control what add-ins are loaded and how to control them. There's this add-ins manager settings and a bunch of different methods for that. Another class also add-in item settings, right? So everything for controlling add-ins. Document API additions. So now we can check if it's in edit mode. This is interesting. Not sure where I would use that, but I think it's good to have. Geometry API additions. Now we can compute is topological closed or geometrically closed. I think this is for toposolids mainly. Then import export data exchange API additions. Now there's a bunch of different methods for the NURB surface data. Now there's wall and compound structure API additions. You can see we have new members for different attachments. I haven't really understood it yet, so we will have a look later. Now, this enhancement allows for customization of compound structure layer priority without the need to change its function, providing more flexibility. So if you before used these kind of layers, you might have to look into that. Then TopoSolid API additions. Again, TopoSolid's got a bunch of updates, so it's not surprise. Here, create subdivision, cut void stability enabled, cut void stability. All right. The next one is ceiling API additions. Now I can get ceiling grid line. That's fine. Room and area and space additions. I heard that they changed the algorithm, so now they also included some methods. Get default location, recenter. Oh, interesting. Move to reference location. That's all fine. Parameter API. Now we can get built-in parameter group type ID. That's fine. View API additions. Accelerator graphic mode. Okay, now we can look into that. And I think we can select one of the options. Interesting. Then graphic API additions, temporary graphics. Now we can set tooltip. And there's also directly drawn graphics, direct context 3D. This is something that I really want to get into and have a look how it works. There are new methods, get color, set color, flush buffer. Yeah, definitely need to get into kind of this one. If you know anything about temporary graphics, please let me know in the comments. Maybe you know some good resources. I would appreciate that. The next independent tag API changes, as tag text. That's fine. Then get failure severity name. IFC changes. So there's get family instance assembly offset. Different kind of enumerations for the mapping. Structural analytical API changes. Connection in structural analytical elements. You can see there's a new property. Then points in structural analytical networks. We can get points in some kind of hub. I have absolutely no idea what it is. Never worked with that. Structural API additions. All right, a few new methods. Here are some enumeration members. Then reinforcement API changes. Again, it's about rebars. I'm just going to kind of scroll like this because it's actually not as much. But still, we can see there are a bunch of new things for the rebars. For the MEP, we can see there are a bunch of new members. You can read them here and a few here as well. For the electrical, you can see browser organization for panel schedules changed. Interesting. Now, MEP fabrication additions. I think you get two methods. For the energy analysis, there are a bunch of different properties right here. All right, guys, and that's pretty much it. That's it about Revit API changes. And again, if you saw some changes related to your previous scripts, it's probably a good idea to go and check it again. Also, nowadays with AI, it's so much easier to work with. You can just take your existing code, throw it in there, and ask, are there any changes? I think I'm going to add in some kind of Revit API compatibility check on the website later. But yeah, overall, AI is going to help you find all these changes. Now, one thing I also noticed about documentation that I want to show you. Let's just go to something like ceiling create, and let's take that one. And you'll notice in here, it looks very empty. When I saw this for the first time, I thought I broke something and I'm parsing data wrong from the documents. Because before you could see we have description, remarks, examples. We had more about return value information. We had exceptions. But in 2026, it's missing here. And it's not like I messed up on my documentation and forgot something. Have a look here. We're just going to open official Revit API, this kind of help file, which is pretty much the documentation itself. Let's search for the same, ceiling create class. So I'm going to click here on search, ceiling. Let's go to ceiling class. Somewhere here, we need to find create. I think it's the second one. I can see in here, it's actually missing all this information. It just wasn't added here. I don't know why it's like this, but I think Autodesk has took a shortcut and decided not to document as much as in previous years. So just keep this in mind that in Revit API 2026, a lot of kind of information about the classes, method, and properties is going to be missing. So the best you can do is go to 2025 and double check. Are there any remarks? Are there any descriptions? Are there any examples, for example? And probably you're going to get a lot more information out of this. Even if it's previous year, oftentimes there are going to be classes and methods without any changes, and still they're now missing all this vital information. Maybe I'll just go and kind of copy and paste it in, but I need to think about if that's going to affect certain things, because I need to be really careful about modifying somebody's API, right? Now, this is just something I wanted you to know. It's really important because you might think that all these Revit API Online websites are now broken, they're missing the information, but no, it's not us. It's just that it was not included in the API itself. Maybe later it's going to be updated, then we're also going to update it. Well, at least I will update. Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that. All right, guys. So now you saw what has changed, what's new. Now it's time to kind of open your all the scripts and modify them. And that's also include myself because EF tools haven't received updates in quite a while. So probably I need to go and finally fix it for 25 and 26. So I'm sorry that it took so long. All right, guys. And now I want to wish you happy coding. And if you wonder what has changed in Revit API 2025 as well, you can also see it in that video right here. Happy coding. See you soon. Bye.